your logo is not just an icon, but if it's a beginning of a brand story.
You can't let not achieving perfection stop you.
Yes, exactly.
That's there, right? What blew my mind was their claim about like every word that you add in actually increases the price of the item that you're going to purchase, right?
Because that is very important to be somewhere you want to be.
So now we can't show it. See, because now if you show it, then everyone will know.
We have to cut this part, censor this part.
Hi folks, welcome to It's Rendering Podcast, and we're just going to be continuing our discussion on how we craft thoughtful experiences at NEM and just in general. Maybe you can pick up a thing or two. And on that note, I've brought in a dear friend and someone who has a huge part to play in all of this, Varun. So yeah, Varun, I'm going to ask you to say hi.
Hi, Daniel.
I mean, not me, man. I mean, sure.
Hi, viewers. Yeah, it's really awkward to shoot this.
I know, and plus, like, I think a lot of overthinking also goes into it, right? It's a lot of like, okay, we need to do this, and it's easier doing it for other people than it is doing it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Very often. So yeah, but anyway, we are here. Let's see how this goes. But yeah, I don't know if you want to tell people a little bit about what you do, essentially.
Yeah, so basically, I didn't join NEM, but I was friends with Daniel from a very long time. But I can't say that. But I basically lead the visual side of things. I look out for the
now
designs.
You're part of NEM.
Yeah, now I'm part of NEM. But earlier I was used to work as a project basis. But now I look after the design side of things, like entirely the branding and building the brand identity stuff. So yeah,
I think that's underselling what you do. I think you should take care of anything to do with visuals. Varun is the one we go to for the final say, and and we were just discussing. We just came across a post recently on Instagram. It's by the BBC, if I'm not wrong, about menu engineering, and we were just discussing about that. I mean, I think most freelancers have gone through this process of having designed at least one menu at some point in their life.
Yeah, dude. Like listing out like all the menu, writing every names manually.
Yeah, and don't forget the photographs. You're like, just get it on Google. No one's done any product photography and all of that.
We didn't have access to stock photos and stuff like Google se chapo.
I mean, you couldn't even dare ask for a budget, and that's like, can we license something on Shutterstock? Wait, what's Shutterstock? Why are you charging me so much? But I mean, that's kind of okay because we've all had to start somewhere, and we've kind of gotten to a point now where we kind of put a lot of thought into it, right? And this video kind of puts that. Maybe it's not like, I know some people in the comments were like, oh, we shouldn't be called menu engineers and all that stuff. And sure, terminology aside, the fact that they put so much thought into how you design a menu. And what blew my mind was their claim about like every word that you add in actually increases the price of the item that you're going to purchase, right? And very often we don't think about this. Like, I've often ordered stuff at restaurants across the country and just never bothered to actually think about all of these things. And I'm not talking about like, some of the run-of-the-mill menus. No offense to anyone who's designed that, because I know I've been there myself. But restaurants that actually put a lot of thought into how they present themselves, how they brand themselves, how they design themselves, so to speak. It's just something that passes you by. But it kind of, I was talking to Jeet, and Jeet was on our previous episode as well about this. And there's this quote which says, "Good design is invisible." And it reminded me of that. Like, very often you go through life not knowing what's like, oh, these are actually designed, like someone's put thought into this. And that's the case a lot with what you do as well. I think sometimes it goes unnoticed or people don't give it enough value. Even something as simple as a logo, right? I don't think you just start off with like, I dreamt of this in the night, I'm going to make a logo. I'm pretty sure you don't start off that way, right?
Exactly. So earlier you said up on menu engineering, right? So me as a designer, I used to only look at design as a thing. But like over the period of time, now I realize that it's not just about the design, but it's about every structure is planned, well planned.
All those why questions have come back to haunt you.
Exactly.
Just for context, when Varun and I started working together, I used to ask him a lot of questions. And I don't know if you want to take the story from there, but fair enough.
Yeah, it used to haunt me. Like, why is this guy asking me every question? Like, why is this shape done? Why is this text here? Why is this shape here?
I promise I wasn't trying to haunt Varun. It was just, getting people to think, like getting.
Yeah, but I think that's a good exercise for everyone. Like, you should ask why questions after designing everything, like, because it's very important as a visual designer, it's very important, like where you place your text, where you place any element in a design. So I think, yeah, that's a good thing for me also. I've learned a lot from that.
But how does that translate into? I mean, you were talking about visual design, what you do right today, right? And
Yeah.
just in general, it's like menus aside, but like say a logo, right? There's a lot of thought. It's not just like there's a name that pops up into your head, and then you just leave it at that, or you figure out just some random font that you pick up, or
Yeah.
some shapes. Because I
So
mean, we're going through the process of designing this right now. You know how tedious that is sometimes.
yeah, exactly.
But
So I think I'll take you back in time, like when I used to when I was in like I was learning Photoshop and stuff. So I won't name the institute, otherwise it will be a chaos. So they used to only teach us how to use the tools, so we never knew like what goes behind creating a logo. So I used to just simply we go up to the internet, look for some references, just copy some element here and there, and done, the logo is done. But later I realized it's not just about that, but there's a lot of thing goes behind creating one just logo. Like it takes like several months to finalize one just small logo, because you're creating a brand, so it should be very recognizable, it should be memorable. So it's just not about the process, but it has a lot of things, like you have to go research, you have to sketch it, you have to go through multiple variations, you have to like go back and forth, like this is not right, this is not correct, this element is not working out. Like it's like a lot of headache. But we as a designer, like beginner designers think ki it's just a logo, create karo and done. But there are a lot of thought process goes behind creating a small logo. So yeah.
so I'll just to ask, when you said like some elements might not work, so how do you figure that out?
I think it's just about experience, because if I'm a beginner, I won't know if this shape is creating something else. But over the
Wait,
period of
sorry,
time,
just would you mind explaining that? What do you mean this
so
shape is creating something else?
so for example, like I don't know if I can give you an example, but some shapes create different meaning. For a designer, it's just a shape, but for other people, like for example Mintra, I don't know if I can name this logo, but yeah, there was some controversy.
It's okay, we can bleep it out. It's fine.
Yeah, so some shapes create different meanings, so you have to be very careful while crafting any logo. So that's the reason we go like review after review after review, so we can finalize that one perfect logo for the final brand. So yeah.
And I don't think you work in isolation, right? Like it's also not just, oh, this is just the designer's vision and nothing else matters. You have to take
Correct.
into account the who you're designing it for as well, right?
Yeah.
That's so important, right?
Right. So for me, I was thinking like I can work alone. I don't want any team. But later I realized like team is important. You have to, like someone has to be at your back to tell you what's wrong, what's not working. So it's very important to work as a team rather than isolation, because isolation is just your perspective in that. You don't get like people reviewing your stuff. Like people can put some inputs in your design, in your logo, and it might be a better one, instead of designing alone and like sitting in your room and just designing one logo, and it might not be very very creative as such. So
Yeah. And also, I mean, sometimes someone else who's, a third party who might not be involved with the brand that you have, sometimes you get caught up in the weeds of doing it, right? You're so caught up in actually designing it that you've forgotten some of the larger picture things. And someone else might come in and be
yeah,
like, oh, actually missing this, or this is not actually who we are designing it for. This is not how we should be looking at this, or this color actually for this particular audience might mean something else entirely.
yeah, exactly. I
And
remembered one thing in between, like I don't know which logo, but I used to like I designed this logo, and for me it's looking different. But you, in your perspective, you are thinking about something else. So like, are this is looking like this. So there's one perspective. Like every person looks things very differently. So you have to take people's opinion. Yeah,
yeah, was it something that we worked on?
I
Just
think
curious
it's.
now, which one?
I think it was TNB, like the Solana one. We
Oh,
had this
okay.
conversation. I don't remember like, which one exactly, but yeah, there was some.
Yeah. Yeah, but even that logo, like the iterations that we went through, right? It wasn't like, oh, we just landed on that logo at some point,
Yeah,
and then figuring out that, oh, actually we could turn this to make it look like the some way related to the Solana logo itself,
exactly.
because
Yeah,
it's a podcast that is talking about two Solana builders and people in the Solana community,
yeah.
and I think that was the reason they actually picked that logo as well. Right? They're like, oh, we
Yes,
didn't we
yes.
didn't notice this before. Like, oh, this is what it means, and they're like, mind blown.
Yeah, because it tells a story, right? When a logo tells a story, it's very interesting for people. Like,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, even the Apple
And that,
logo, yeah, it has a story behind it. Like, although a lot of people won't like normal people won't relate to the story, but still it's very interesting to look about it. Even the Nike logo, yeah.
are you calling us abnormal now? All of us designers.
No offense to anyone.
Yeah, but so I think when we first kind of met, you picked up on this title that I was kind of using, if I'm not wrong, like the visual storyteller kind of thing. And then we were you. I don't know if you started using it or what it was, but on my personal portfolio before we kind of started NAM, the team side of things, I used to always say visual storyteller, which is fine. But then you kind of realize that, hang on, your stories are not just visual, right? Like,
Yeah,
even with you don't just start off with a computer. You don't start off with a, I don't know, graphics tablet or whatever else you use. You start off way back, and you take that like to like just basics, which other people will never see, right?
yeah,
Like, I know
exactly.
used to show us your notebook with the dots.
Yeah, still I like in between I like completely stopped doing like that old school process, but I think that's the basic process for even every person who's in creative field. Like, you have to take your paper and pen and draw out your visual things, because that is very important to be somewhere you want to be. Because
Yeah,
when you start with basic thing, then only you can look at the bigger picture. So
you're gonna start advocating for cutting down trees now with all these papers and pen. No, but I think there is a point to be made there, right? Because you can't. I don't know about you. Like, this is just me. Maybe I am old school, whatever. But you give me a notebook versus you give me a like a blank screen on a tablet. I will probably be able to ideate better on a notebook than I will on a tablet.
for
On a
sure.
notebook, like, you can just jump around and be as messy as you can. Like, I'm not saying that you can't on a tablet, for example, but then this whole thing of, oh, I have to pinch to shift a page and things like that. It's not
Yeah,
there on a notebook, and there's something visceral where you can feel it, I think. And I know, like, we say that we shouldn't always be driven by feelings, but a lot of what we do is feelings, right?
yeah, exactly.
Um,
And I
and
think
like,
also
yeah.
digital thing is like you can undo stuff. Like, if
Hmm.
you go somewhere wrong, you can just undo stuff. But in paper, you can see that the wrong iterations. You can see the messy ones, and that's interesting to look at, because later if
Yeah.
you go back in time and, yeah, I did this, I did. It's good to see, good to show people also. So
Yeah. Yeah, beauty is a process. Like, it's not just
yeah,
like you just come up, like, you might, I mean, just saying, you might suddenly have an epiphany somewhere, some divine inspiration somewhere, whatever, but that's rare. Like, and that's what we get caught up in sometimes, right? Oh, I'm not feeling inspired. But
yeah,
then you've not started that process to get to where you need to be inspired.
yes,
And
exactly.
that's often where a lot of people get stuck also, right? Like, and since we're talking about design, you have to design your own inspiration also sometimes. You have to get to that process, right? Like, it's like, okay, sure, this is messy, I'm wasting, like, I don't know, call it waste of paper, whatever. And, oh, I'm not getting ideas. But the fact that you actually, that piece of paper is not blank, that
Yeah,
screen is not blank,
yeah,
proves that, yeah, you do have ideas. They might not be great ideas,
hmm.
they might not be workable ideas, but they are ideas nonetheless. I think
Yes,
people forget that part of it, right? And it's very easy today because you only see the end result. Like, even, I'm just saying that even the post that we mentioned earlier, we've only
hmm.
seen the end result of the design. We've not seen the iterations that they've gone through, maybe the research that they've done to figure out how psychology works with people who come to restaurants and all of these things. And I think for you also, you've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out, like, okay, the audience might look at it this way, or this sort of a color scheme in this particular industry works better for this sort of an audience. And yeah, I don't know, I've found it fun, like, listening to your thought process very often, and even the talk that you gave us, like, what was it, 2 weeks back, about logo designing and all of that. It's quite fun to see behind the scenes, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. And I think earlier I had this thing called, like, if you like whatever I'm designing, I used to like it, but I never used to think from an audience perspective, like if audience will like it. So it's just not about key if you are liking the design, but you have to think from the audience perspective, or from the client's perspective, like if they will like it. Because for me it's very beautiful, for them it might not be. And you have to break that emotional thing between you and the client, and you have to think beyond your mind. You have to think from
mm,
others perspective. That's one thing I learned from this whole process. Like, earlier I used to only focus on my thing, my creativity, but later I realized it's not just about that. You have to break that thing, and you have to move on, and you have to break that emotion thing. I have learned it
yeah.
a hard way.
Yeah, I know. I had a professor whose favorite phrase always was, "Do not be married to your work."
Yeah,
He used to say, "Flirt with it, but don't get married. Now, that's not life advice. I'm just saying for anyone else out there. But it comes to your point, like you get so emotionally attached. Sometimes you have blind spots. Then you stop seeing the reality, right,
Yeah.
of what you've designed. And sometimes that leads you down a path which is like, okay, what am I doing here, kind of.
Yeah, and you
but
get
then,
stuck in a cave.
yeah.
Like you don't know what to do after that, because you are so behind your creative skills. Like you don't know what to do after that, and you get stuck and like now it's finished.
खुद खतरनाक समझ के चले जाते हैं भाई. But
Yeah.
anyway, so just to understand that, how do you balance that though? Because as a creative, you still need satisfaction, right? Personal satisfaction has to be there. There has to be that gratification part of it. And when you are just like, sometimes clients might come back and be like, oh, this is not really working for us, or this doesn't make sense. You've put your heart and soul into it, and you sometimes feel like this is it, but then it comes back. Very often that's me before it goes to the clients, only for you. But yeah, very often it comes back and be like, oh, this isn't working. So how do you kind of balance that part of it?
I think the first thing would be like we can try our best. Like if we can find a middle ground between the client's expectation and my satisfaction. So you can find a middle ground, and if that's working for both of them, then it's fine. If it's not working for the client, then you have to stick to what they are saying, and you have to let go your emotional part, because it doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to let it go, but in most of the cases, if you have a strong point to put in front of the client, like this is not working, this should work, and this is the story behind what I'm creating. So in most of the cases it should work, but sometimes you have to let go the emotions you have, and you have to follow clients thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I like what you said about just having that story to tell. I think that's so important. Like circling back
Yeah.
to what we said about the why question, right?
Mhm.
That's the thing. Like you should have a reason for what you're doing and why you're doing it. It can't just be
Exactly.
like, oh, I like this, looks good. Like that's not good enough. And sometimes I'm just saying, like I find this very frustrating with clients, or sometimes they'll be like, oh, I don't like the look of this. Or they'll be like, oh, I love the look of this. And I'm like, yeah, can you tell me why? Because if I don't know why, then I don't know how to take that forward. Right.
True, true.
Especially when you're designing something, and it's not like the logo doesn't live in isolation, right? Or there's so much more that, like you mentioned, you do brand identities as well. Like there's like just the visual identity part of it. There's so much. Like I think, what was it? The last brand book that we worked on, how many pages was it? I think almost 100 probably.
Yeah, more than 100.
Yeah, more than 100 pages, right? And what's that? That's all just like visuals,
Visual
side
thing,
of
yeah.
it, right?
You're telling a story like about that brand, like in every sense. Even the shape, even the icons, even the imagery, everything tells a story. So it's like it's like a small brand, like it's a small logo, but it has a, I think I remember this quote, like your logo is not just icon, but if it's a beginning of a brand story. So yeah.
I love that. I'll have to find out who said this. That's really nice. Well, I'm just thinking, because our last episode was about like web stuff. So I'm just thinking, like the first thing on a website that you see on the top left corner is a logo.
Yeah.
But then you don't, that's like your starting point. You don't focus on that, right? Everything else is what matters, right? And yeah, you mentioned icons. This is one thing I want to bring up, is I think when we were working on the brand book, you were showing us the system or the grid and things that you use to design icons, right? It's not just copy paste or like, oh, this icon looks good.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just looking at the icons on our screen that we can. I know the others can't, but like the icons that we can see right now, everything is so distinct. Like you know exactly what does what, and you understand that, and it doesn't look like it doesn't look disjointed. Right. All of the icons, they look like they're part of one family, so to speak. And we love this term, right? It has to be part of the design family, so to speak.
Correct.
So how do you go about doing that? Because I know like logo and all is fine, but then icons can't match the logo always, right?
Yeah. So while I was designing this logo, so I had this thought, like most of the icons are very generic, and sometimes it just looks like it's a icon, but I had to,
I mean, yeah, because most of us just pick it up from whatever we can find online, right? Or we just get an icon pack from somewhere, and then we're like, oh, this is for the brand.
True. So
that's not designing it, right?
Yeah, but I had to do something different, because it has to have a own identity of the icon itself. So I think I had this we had this logo where the icon was a globe. So what I did is I incorporated that globe icon into a circle, and I made a dynamic icon out of that. I don't know if you can show that after editing.
I think we can, right?
Yeah. So I think that would be a better option to present it. So I created the system where it directly represents to the logo. So it creates a joint thing, like it's a part of the entire brand family. So it has a different look to it, and like whoever looks at that icons, they can reconnect directly to the logo, like it's a part of this logo. So I think that's the one good thing about that entire brand kit. And
but I like what you said about like you wanted to incorporate the element from the logo, and
yeah,
always want people to harken back or remember the logo.
yeah.
And that kind of comes back to what you were saying about the logo is just the start of the brand story, right? But why is it so important? Like, I'm just like, why can't we just have icons that don't remind us of the logo, or don't remind us of the brand identity? Why can't we just use any odd icon over there?
Then your brand doesn't exist. Because, for example, there's one brand, just for example. So I saw
don't
the
name
color.
names.
Yeah. So I saw the color of the brand. You saw the logo of the brand, and they don't match. So for you, that's a different brand. For me, that's a different brand. So for a normal audience, the brand should connect in every aspect, not just the logo, but the color theme, their icons, their imagery. That should have a consistent look to it, so that no matter what perspective you are looking into, you should directly connect to it. For example, McDonald's, I just had this thought. So even there,
now you made us do this exercise also, right? Recently with with I think it was a few different brands, and you were like,
yeah,
see, you
right,
can actually still identify it. Sorry,
So
go on with the McDonald's one.
yeah, so if you just hide their logo, you can still recognize what the brand is. Same with the most of the big brands. So they didn't just create a brand, but they created the entire brand story in every aspect. Like whether it be the imagery part, whether it be the typography part, whether it's a tagline, just the tagline, you can still recognize
even the
the
packaging,
brand.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of creative packaging done with the entire, like the logo element itself. So that's one thing why brand should be coherent, like it should connect with the every aspect of the whole brand package, like from color to typography to icons, everything.
Yeah, like one of the values of a good brand identity is coherence.
Yeah.
And that's why you need a designer, right? You can't just have some random thoughts somewhere, just put them together, mash it up, and then spew it out there. Sooner or later, you're going to hit somewhere where people don't know who you are. Like, what's your identity, kind of.
Yeah, I think I might trigger some designers, but I've seen this reel. Like anyone can be designer. Like so Mike Hutta, I'm a logo designer. I'm creating this brand story. That's not a designer. Like I won't say that's a designer. You have to put your like blood and sweat into this. You have to keep every aspect of creating a logo. Every like a design, the entire design. You have to be very mindful of what you're creating. You just can't directly randomly sit and design everything. So yeah.
And just so people don't hate you, I think just to clarify on your point, right, about like anyone can be a designer. Like I think you watched this movie Ratatouille, right, the animated one, Pixar. So even in that anyone can cook. I think or is it everybody can cook, something like that. And then the critic takes offense to that, right? He's like, no, it can't be. But then his perception changes. So it's not that everybody can cook. It's that anyone can actually become a great cook, right? That's the thing. Like anyone, it's not that everyone knows how to design. Like just because I can sketch something doesn't make me a designer.
Yes.
But what you said about being mindful, just so that no one hates on you, just being that, it's like, yeah, anyone, just put a little bit of effort, a little bit of thought. More than effort, it's more thought into it. And coming back to what we were talking about, like crafting thoughtful experiences, it's an experience that you're crafting at the end of the day, and it has to be thoughtful. Otherwise, what are you crafting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That experience is not going to make any sense at all.
That like the whole journey of creating anything in terms of any design, it should be a very memorable journey. Like you should remember every phase of what you designed. It's not just ki randomly I had a thought, I designed it. For me, I do this exercise sometimes. Like for example, I need to create some design and I have this very crazy idea. So what I do is I just sketch it out on paper so that I don't forget it later. I might not create that design just now. I might keep it for later, but that's one visual thing I remembered and I just crafted out on my paper, because that thought might not never come back to my mind. I might forget tomorrow. So that's one exercise I do sometimes. Like if I have a logo idea, I just randomly sketch it. I might never create that, but it's a good idea to keep doing that, because that keeps your mind working. It keeps your mind very
and you
creative.
never know when you will be inspired also,
exactly.
right? Like you never know when inspiration will strike, so to speak. But you're always open to it striking you. You're open to being inspired also, right? And you're making that part of your process.
Exactly.
Right. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to sit at my computer or at my with my notebook. Now I'm going to design a logo. It's part of your everyday life. Like that design isn't something that's just part of a 9 to 5 or something like that. Design is part of like 24/7 for you, right? You're thinking it,
Yeah.
you are, and it might not be work related, right? If I'm not wrong, like most of these things that you were just talking about, like the ideas, they're not work related. They're just random stuff that pops up, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not related to work also, but it's like random design I have. Yeah, I can do this. Like it's not very creative or may not be very unique. It might be just random thought. You might find it anywhere on the internet, but you
Right.
still have that thought. You can just sketch it or write it down. Like you have this thought. Maybe you can merge it later in your some any other project.
Yeah, and once you've actually started working on it, you can always pull, like you said, you can merge it with something. You can pull elements of that into whatever else you're doing. I think
Correct.
you've been reading this book, right? Steal Like an Artist,
Yeah, still like an
right?
artist.
That's exactly what it is, right? There's nothing technically speaking unique. Like
Yeah,
it's
I
all
think
it's all
it's
mix and match and
mix
your
and match from,
experiences.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
but
that
what makes it
author also
unique is your
says,
experience, then, right?
yeah. See, he says that nothing in this internet is unique. You can find it anywhere on the internet. It's just that you are repurposing what's already there, but in a different way. So yeah.
And that's what makes it unique, because Varun is doing it. Not like if I were doing it, it would. I mean, I'm not going to be at your level anyway. But I'm just saying, like if I
No,
were
dude.
doing it, it would be a different experience, and
I've
then you would
learned a
be you
lot
would.
from you. You can't say that.
No, but that's. I mean, that's kind of you to say. But frankly speaking, like I'm just being honest. Like if we had to design, if both of us had to design a logo, you would design a logo that actually means a lot and that's actually usable versus me right now, because I've also been away from just
Yeah,
designing
yeah,
for a long time, right? That's also
yeah.
there. um Now I can just talk, that's it. So sorry. But yeah, I think we're kind of also running through time at the moment, and we've been recording for quite a bit. But yeah, I feel like we've not even scratched the surface of what we wanted to discuss. We sat here to discuss or something around video
Exactly.
engineering, or just about how everything that you see is actually designed by someone with some thought process, and then I don't
Yeah.
know where we ended up.
I don't.
But
I also don't remember where we started. We
all I
just
remember is we
randomly
briefly
ranted.
spoke. Yeah, exactly. But we briefly spoke about like icons and then brand identities and then logo designing. Sorry, I
Yeah,
probably took us off the rails. But
but I think
anyway,
it's a good thing because it already, like, it was never in my mind to talk about these things, but that gave me a nostalgic feeling of what we did earlier.
yeah, it wasn't on my mind initially to talk about it as well. It just went with the flow. But it comes to your point as well, right? About what you said, like you might not, it might not be refined, but you've got it out there now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So this podcast might not be refined; it's still rendering. We're still going to get to a point where it is probably refined. But
Yeah,
it's conversations at the end of the day, just figuring out processes, figuring out things that are there. And I'm sure, like just to remind like ourselves of what we've kind of spoken of, and just ensuring that what we do should be thoughtful. It shouldn't just be random. We need to, and that's the best way to grow and learn, right? I don't know what your top tip would be
yeah. I think
in how
I
to
would
grow.
say, like, I've learned one thing from you is you might not be perfect, but you have to strive for perfection in whatever you do. Like, like sometimes we think, yeah, jane do, we are like neglecting some things, but you have to sit through it and you have to figure out something which is working for everybody, and you have to be very precise about things. Like, it might not be perfect now, but you have to strive for that. Like, whatever it might be in design terms and work culture, you have to strive for perfection. Maybe you might not be perfect all the time, but you have to at least try it. So yeah.
Yeah, you can't let not achieving perfection stop you.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
there, right? Like I remember, it's not there anymore, but on the street where we are, like, because at that time there was this graffiti artist who used to live, and I'm gonna throw a little bit of Nepali out there, but he had essentially painted this thing, and it said, "Bhai halcha le marno atyo," um, "Bhai halcha," which is essentially Nepali for "ho jayega." Le marno atyo, which is like, okay, that's about to kill me, right? And that's kind of the mentality that a lot of us have, right? Which is kind of like, yeah, like you said, like, ho jayega, or
Hmm.
it's okay, but it's okay is not good enough, right?
Yeah,
Or good enough is not great, right? There is a huge difference between saying that, oh, this is good enough, versus
hmm.
this is what I've designed is great.
Because that will
And
stick to you for the entire life. For example, you have neglected some things now, you'll still do in the future. You won't actually like try to be perfect, but you have to start today so that you can be perfect tomorrow. Like,
yeah, Like even your logos, we were going through them. Like I think recently you were showing us some of the old ones that you had done, right? You can't look back and be like, oh, I'm going to create the same work today, because you've progressed so much since then, you've grown so much since then, that you are always going to create something better today than you had created in the past, or than you've ever been that you ever thought possible that you could even do. Right? If you show your I don't know 5-year-old, like if you go back in time 5 years, we've been talking too much about time travel today, but anyway, if you go back in time for 5 years back and you show yourself these logos that you designed today, and I mean yourself at that point is going to be very surprised, like, oh, I did these.
So I think one more thing I just remembered what you said. So earlier, even I used to get underpaid. I used to do one thing, like whatever I'm designing, I used to give my 100% to it, whether it might be like time consuming for me. I might get very low pay for that, but I used to put my 100% to bring out that good quality. I think that one thing stayed for me still now. Like even if I'm not getting much out of that, I still put my 100% to it, because at the end of the day, it's my satisfaction. Like I for me, it's like I've achieved something, even though I'm not getting something out of that, and that stays for a long time. Like even even today, if I look my 5 years back work, I'm still proud of that. Even if I didn't get anything out of that, but I'm still happy that I did that. So that's one thing I just remembered.
Yeah, no, I like that point. I think that's a good note to end on as well. Like, give it everything, no matter how small or how big or how much you're getting out of it. Right? Give it everything. I think the world needs more of people who actually give rather than just expecting to get back. So, thanks for being one of those people, Varun. Anyway, So for everyone who's listening or watching us or whatever, just like, share, subscribe, and I think Varun, we can share your socials as well. Where should people go follow you? Because I think you got a lot of visual stuff and tidbits that everyone can learn from. So
I hope I start my 100-day challenge again.
No, I'm going to join you. Tell me when you're restarting, and I'll join you. But what's your handle, or where do you want people to follow you?
Maybe I'll just link it down here.
Sure, we can do that. But just follow Natural Eye Media, and just follow the podcast as well, obviously, and rate the podcast. And if you think it's interesting or helpful in any way, definitely share it. And let us know what you'd like us to talk about or discuss, because right now we're just spitballing, because this is just normal. This is a normal, I don't know, Friday evening team call kind of approach for us at the moment. But let us know what you'd like us to talk about, and we'll try and see how we. Sorry,
coffee with Daniel.
No, it was, what was it? Dinner with Daniel or something like that, right? No. I think we'll get other people to host as well. I think I'm not the best of hosts out there.
No, I think you're doing a great job.
I mean, what choice do you have, man?
We don't have any other host.
So anyway, thanks Varun. Thanks for making time out on a Friday night, and it's just turned Saturday. I just saw the time. It's Saturday at the moment. So thanks for making time out, and we'll catch up. I think there's a lot more for us to cover, and there's lots of other things for us to look at as well. So we definitely have things to discuss. So yes, for everyone, do like, share, subscribe, the normal thing. And we'll be putting out more content. Let us know what you'd like to hear as well. So thanks, Varun.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.